All right, here we are. So, yes, Ted Adam Green basically says, "Yay, we're back." Yes, we are back. Uh,
Yes.
that was pretty
Sorry about that.
crazy. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. What can I tell you? This is one of the things I hate about PCs. Actually, is the fact that they just decide sometimes they're gonna update whenever they want. And so, right in the middle of my last point, the computer just decided, you know what? I'm shutting down to update, even though I usually keep the updates going. But Uh, some odd, weird, bizarre reason. It's. I mean, usually it actually waits until you go to shut it down. Sometimes it'll force an update then, where it's kind of like, okay, you just don't have a choice. It'll say like restart an update or shut down an update. But this time, I mean, it just said nope, you're gonna do it. So yes, we are back. Uh, Iron Boy Wonder actually is joining us now, and he says, see Star Wars View again, prequel, gave me the satisfaction of your solo. Yeah, I. The thing is that I understand. I understand why. And he says this month, second time viewing The Empire Strikes Back. The thing about it is, and this is a good point that Iron Boy Wonder makes, is the fact that the problem is that the current Lucasfilm under Disney is not exactly uh giving us anything more even than the streaming stuff. Now, I don't know. With the solo film, I actually like the solo film. I think that that was good. I would say that I generally did like that movie at least as much as the stream. I don't know. That's another good point too that he brings up. I mean, if we're looking at the films versus streaming, and then you juxtapose that with maybe George Lucas return. First question for you is, what do you think of the films that we got under Disney versus the streaming shows we got under Disney? And then the follow up to that would be, where would you want to plug in Lucas first if he were to make a return? Streaming or film? I think I know the answer to that one, but
Well, I'll work my way backwards.
uh
Film.
huh. Yeah, I kind of figured you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
I mean, even
Yeah.
even as I'm asking the question, I'm like, yeah, I think I know where he's gonna go with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if I had my choice or my pick, I would definitely bring Lucas in for the film. I'll probably have someone else do the streaming. I mean, of course, Lucas will probably be a part of that, sure, as far as like oversight. But I will have someone else helm the uh, streaming um, live action shows. Um, the first question, make sure I understood the question. Um, was it which do I think which one is better, the
Yeah,
films or
if you
the
were,
stream?
yeah, under Disney.
Under Disney, which one is the better, the films or the stream?
Now, granted,
Ugh,
I know that while you're answering this, there's under Disney, there's actually more streaming than there are films.
true.
Not much more. If you count each movie, I mean, you do have the sequel trilogy. You got basically five, well, six now that we have The Mandalorian and Grogu. So you have six films essentially under Disney. And then you have, I don't know, it might actually be about as many series.
Yeah. It's kind of a tough question.
It is. It really is. And I think part of
Yikes.
the reason for that is because,
Because they're so spotty too in both
well,
sides.
yes, right, exactly. But the other thing too is that they spent a lot more time cultivating the series versus the films. So I mean, and
Yeah.
it's true,
I,
like you said. The quality varies, right? You have the Mandalorian, but then you also have like the Acolyte. So I mean, it's kind of like, well, the Acolyte
but
and
then
other shows are going to bring down the average.
you also have to you have to look at the streaming thing by season too. It's like, okay,
Yeah, that's true
because
too.
you could look at Mandalorian. You could say like, well, if you're talking about Mandalorian season 1 and 2, sure, it was great, but then you get to 3 and it's like, so now you have to play the law of averages. You know, like you got to average the thing out. But I'm going to say, oh, God. See, you got Rogue One, Solo, sequel trilogy. Um, I think I would probably go with streaming.
Yeah, me too. And I'll tell you why. Because
Stream, yeah, I
honestly,
had a, that was that's a really tough question,
it is. And I mean,
man.
but the thing is that one of the things that I factor in on that though is the fact that what brings up the average in the films is Rogue One and to a lesser
Hmm.
degree Solo.
Hmm.
Whereas even though The Force Awakens is technically good, I guess, it's not
Hmm.
like the sequel trilogy actually way brings down the average. And so now you're only talking about, one, maybe two good films. And you get more than that with the series because not only do you actually have each show, but you also have each season,
Yeah.
And so you actually are telling a much more in-depth story because again, sure you have the Acolyte, you have the Book of Boba Fett. Those are probably like the bottom tiered ones. Obi-Wan probably sits in the middle somewhere. And this is going by show and just averaging out the show, right? And
Right.
and some of those, like the Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan only got one season. Acolyte too. But then, of course, at the top tier, you have the Mandalorian and you have Andor.
Hmm.
Ahsoka probably sits somewhere in the middle, maybe upper middle, depending, I guess, on the episode.
Now, even with this, are we? I mean, because see, I included Shadow Lord too in part of that because it is a streaming thing, even though it's animated.
Yeah, and
I
I
don't know if
don't,
we're counting that,
I
but
guess, I mean, well, no, I'm not counting that. And the reason why I wouldn't
okay.
count it is simply because I would still say streaming even without that. But
I mean, yeah, I mean, still, that would still be my answer, but I'm just saying, like, I
no, and I mean,
included that
you,
just because.
I mean, depending on how you spun it, you could. But I'm looking at it from the standpoint of eventually comparing it to because if you start going animated, now it's no longer apples to apples. Now it's apples to oranges. Where if you
Understood.
go like live action compared to live action
Live
films,
action.
it
Understood.
makes more sense. And then, of course, in the scope of this discussion, when you bring in the other thing that we were talking about, where it's like, okay, now where do you bring Lucas in? It's kind of like, well, you wouldn't necessarily want to bring him into animation. Granted, he did spearhead the Clone Wars, but
Hmm.
that's Filoni pretty much has that locked up. Let me get to a couple of these chats before we go. So Iron Boy, I always love his text. I have to like decipher them. So he's talking about how Lucas conceptualized Han Solo's backstory, where he was raised by Chewbacca, knowing Yoda, you know, and Chewbacca's background and all that stuff. I do remember something regarding that, um, like hearing about that. Then, uh, original trilogy film superior than the sequel or prequel one. Yeah, I would probably say without question. The Acolyte basically is like the most boring to watch. It's pretty painful. And then Ted comes in and says animated elevates series over movies. So in Ted's opinion, when you do factor in the animation, that's when it starts to elevate them over the movies. I think you and
Yeah.
I are arguing that basically
Yeah.
the
If you
even without them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you're comparing apples to apples, like you said, live action to live action. Then that's one thing. But I think once you do factor in like Rebels, you do factor in uh, Clone Wars, you do factor in uh, Shadow Lore, you start factoring all these other animated series coupled with the live action. Then yeah, I think it's a no brainer. That the streaming is better than the films.
Well, it would definitely, yes. I think then it would definitely outpace them by a mile. But I would even, like I
Hmm.
said, I even think the series that overshadow the movies. We're talking under Disney here. We're not talking when you
Right.
factor in the prequels and original trilogy, because then it would swing the other way. But If you're
Exactly.
just talking about under Disney, I still think that the series outpaced the films. Now, it probably isn't by as wide of a margin as it would be if you factored in the animation, but I think arguably, I don't even know too many people that would argue that point. Well, maybe Ronaldo, because he loved
Yeah.
all the stuff. Still wonder what happened. Ted says, "Have you all watched the Pattinson cut of Ahsoka yet?" I know he did send the link to Discord. I think it would fix most of your issues with the season, as it's a movie length. It's movie length now, a worthy watch for sure. Haven't had a chance to see it. Want to see it because first of all, it would be cool to see a different cut of it. Some of the issues. I would also be curious. Like that would actually be something that would be fun to do during the more slow time, is to actually do a review of that. Just to see what it is. Of course, we have to make sure that both of us watch it. Depending on the edit, I mean, if it's a movie length, if it's only like a couple hours or something, then yeah, we can knock that out. But you know,
Mhm.
what is that thing, like 8 episodes or something?
Yeah. Was it 8 or 10? I think it might be. I think it might be 8.
I think all that stuff. I mean, with the exception of like Andor, which was like 12 at one point.
12. Yeah. But yeah.
And I think the Mandalorian, not even that. I think went. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that when you factor in a lot of these things, the shows still outpace the movies. Now, the second part of the question is, say you can get George Lucas back. Where are you
Hmm.
putting him? Are you going to put him in the TV shows, or are you going to put him in the films? And you said the
Oh,
films,
films. Yeah,
right?
100%.
And I would agree with that. But I will say this: I would actually be curious. You know what? I don't know, man. I might retract that. I might actually say what I would love to do is he already had 100 episodes written. Is now let him make that Coruscant 1313 series that he was about to make before he sold it off. He had already written 100 episodes of it, which is like, you know, geez, that's like, you know, 10 seasons now if you you go by like, the current
Yeah,
standard.
today is, yeah, I would say at today's standard. Yeah.
That'd be like a 10 season show. I mean, granted, if he was still thinking in the old like 22 episode or whatever, you're still talking 5 seasons though. So I would be probably curious, and I think that Disney would probably feel more comfortable letting him do that than guide the film, even though it's kind of hilarious because he's the guy that actually created it all.
Well,
Um,
that's okay. Okay.
no, I mean that's basically all I was gonna say.
Well, that's kind of where my uh, where I was trying to hinge the topic tonight was the fact that George Lucas is the creator of Star Wars, and my issue that I'm having is that maybe it should just stay with George, because quite honestly, when you look at other franchises, with some exceptions, yes, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. I know this. However, there are way more other franchises that have suffered because they've gone away from their sole creator. Like Terminator, for example, James Cameron. You got the Chucky series that has suffered. You've got now. I mean, Star Trek has suffered. Originally, now it was doing well, here and there for a little bit, but that has eventually taken a hit.
Well,
As
but
far as, at least
you
as
bring
far
up a
as the
good
TV
point.
shows go.
No, with Star Trek, you bring up a really good point. I got to interject on this one because Star Trek, after basically Rick Berman was the Dave Filoni of Star Trek.
Hmm.
Rick Berman worked very, very closely with Gene Roddenberry. They
Yeah.
did, the next generation together. And then Roddenberry dies shortly after Star Trek 6 is theatrically. Actually, I think he might have died before that. Yeah, he did. He died before he saw it made, and I think he even saw a cut of it, but he died before it was theatrically released.
Released. Yeah.
Berman takes over, and pretty much everything maintains there's people that argue the same thing, but there was a much lesser degree of variation between, Roddenberry and then what Berman ended up doing. And people like that. But see, then the problem hit when Rick Berman was no longer involved. And now you have all these other people that are taking Star Trek into these wildly different directions.
Hmm.
Some are better than others.
Hmm.
And Star Trek is actually suffering the same fate in a different way than Star Wars. Now,
Hmm.
friend Kriston basically says, wrong people in charge of movies. Lucas Favreau 2027. Um,
Presidential.
I know, right? Yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. So Universal's bag is like, hello, everything okay? Yeah, we just basically what happened, just as a recap, now that pretty much everybody has joined us, is that my computer just decided, thank you, Microsoft, that it's just going to update. Didn't even give me like the option to shut it down
Wait
or
till later
anything.
time.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
basically, usually it hits like, you go to shut it down and it'll say shut down an update, restart an update or whatever. Yeah, it didn't give me the thing. It just decided, nope, you're doing it right now. And it forced an update on me. So it cut the stream, and that's why this happened. So Universal basically says, I haven't watched Star Trek since Voyager. And that's basically the thing, because that was kind of the last thing that I think Berman had a hand in doing.
Hmm.
Back when you had that, right? You had, so post the death of, well, no, Enterprise probably was. But after Roddenberry died, you still had Next Generation going on for another, few seasons or whatever, like another 3 seasons, I think. Then, of course, you had Voyager that had started at some point. You had Deep Space Nine, and then you basically had Enterprise that came along a little bit later. Point is, though, they all shared, the same universe. That was obvious, and it was just one of those things where you definitely felt like there was still quality, even if you weren't really that into the show. You at least were like, okay, this show isn't for me, but at least it's still a good quality show. The Star Trek of now, I mean, there was some, like, the first couple of seasons of Discovery I thought were actually pretty good, like up till season 3, and then it completely, lost its way to me. Strange New Worlds, I've only seen season 1. I liked it. I thought that was really good, actually. I don't know about seasons 2 and 3 because I think 4's out too. I haven't really watched it since then. And then there was another one that was just like terrible. There was like some like really bad one, like Starfleet or something, I think it was called. And it was just, I didn't even bother watching. I just read the synopsis. I'm like, okay, this is just a bunch of, garbage. But the point is, Star Trek is suffering the same as Star Wars is, where both of them, like you said, and then of course you gave the other examples like Child's Play, The Terminator, things like that, where it was like the original creators abandon it. I mean, you could even, if you really want to go hop genres, you can even go into the horror genre and talk about Halloween. Now,
Halloween. I was about to say that was another one.
I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think that it jumped, like, because I like, so Halloween 2, of course, Carpenter was forced to make. He didn't really want to. He actually drank a 6-pack of beer trying to write the script because he didn't know what to do with it. And then Halloween 3 comes out, and that was like Carpenter's sort of last thing. He wanted to turn it into more of an anthology thing. Of course, everybody just, it's got a lot of love now because people recognize that it's a really, really good movie. It's just that, you call some Halloween 3, and everybody's like, hey, where's Michael Myers at, right?
Hmm.
But then, and this is the other important part too. Then it starts to go into that whole like Thorn trilogy with episodes 4, 5, and 6. Still think it's Star Wars. And then, you know, I mean, they tried to do H2O, and then they rebooted eventually in 2018. Then you had the Rob Zombie ones, so it did veer away. Now in 2018, Carpenter was actually involved. He did the music, and that was unsurprisingly probably one of the best ones. So even though I personally, I enjoyed a lot of the Halloween movies that were made without him. And that's true even with the Terminator, because I really liked the Terminator 3 act. I thought that Stana Locan or whatever her name was, so so amazing. It's beautiful. But I also thought it was a really good movie. Like it wasn't just that I was, enjoying watching her like run around or anything. I actually thought it was a really good movie. And also Terminator Genesis I thought was pretty good. Salvation was okay. But you do bring up an extremely good point when you talk about how when it gets away from the creators, you know, it does fall apart a little bit. Tristan says Enterprise didn't have a classical music theme. I knew it was DOA after that. Well, and then the other problem too, right, is that that's almost similar to Ahsoka when Sabine's riding her speeder or whatever, and
Oh yeah.
they did that like modern, almost like BC Boys sabotage in Star Trek, the reboots
So
that J.J.
yeah,
Abrams did, and it's just like, okay, this is so out of place,
yeah,
so out of place. Now it was done correctly in The Mandalorian and Grogu. You did have different musical styles peppered all throughout that movie, including some more industrial, type sounding stuff, but it actually fit though. That's the
yeah.
difference. Then he goes on to say, talking about Terminator 3, it would have been better if Edward Furlong had been able to reprise his role, and I totally agree. They tried, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that. They did actually try to get him, but he was just so messed up on drugs. Just, everything was crazy that they couldn't. I think they actually tried to even screen test him. He had just completely lost it.
But yeah, I mean, that's just been my whole thing. Is like, do you feel that when you start moving away from the source, because and that's the thing is, it's not like when you have these different franchises like Marvel or DC, where you got Batman, Superman, the X-Men for Marvel, or the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, all like that. There's so much source material, and I'm not saying that Star Wars or Star Trek doesn't have source material, because clearly there's books being made that are really good. There's comics that are out. I mean, there's tons of source material that other people have created. However, it's still kind of like when it comes to the films, though, it's kind of like, okay, creating these new characters, creating these things sometimes just doesn't translate well when it comes to film as opposed to other mediums. Like, yeah, sure, you can write a new character in a book or something, and you have all this time in a book to kind of develop them, and there's time to grow with it. But like in a movie, you have 2.5 hours to make me care. Why
Well,
should I
this is
care?
this is
You
why I
know,
say this is why I say that Disney hasn't completely leveraged the television series correctly.
hmm
We talked about this at length, I think. I don't remember which show it was, or maybe it was just when they announced they were going to do Disney Plus and do The Mandalorian, and we were just talking about. I think it was actually The Mandalorian reviews, because we said, okay, they probably should be doing like an Avengers style thing, right? Where you basically had the Mandoverse, and then what you do is in each of the different series, maybe you know, put forth like some sort of a story arc that's basically, like a crossover between all the series. So each of the series has their own storyline, but then there's a broader storyline that basically crosses over all the series. And then those converge, you make a movie that essentially ends that phase. So if you're
hmm
comparing it to Marvel, basically what it comes down to is each of the shows, whatever season they're on, that would be like the standalone movies, and then the film that they would make would become like the Avengers. That was one way that they could have done it. And they don't necessarily have to do it that way, but I mean, there should have been some deliberate methodology by how they did the whole thing, right? So in other words, this doesn't seem like just throwing darts at a dartboard where all this stuff is unrelated. Because had they done that, they could have really done the best of both worlds. And then, of course, where else Marvel did it right was in the reverse. Because when you're talking about the standalone films versus, and this is why I probably shouldn't have even brought this example up, because that's strictly film. If you really want to look at how they handled their TV shows, they basically would take the stuff that happened in the movies and then they would create a series that more or less continued and got more in depth. And Star Wars just never really did that,
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, and that's just the big problem. We've always said that the big problem with Disney Star Wars, especially when you're talking about the sequels, is the lack of planning.
yeah.
Everything just seems like it's just kind of cobbled together. We got a piece here, we got a piece there. Let's figure out how we're going to do this. I mean, like right now, post Rise of Skywalker, everyone keeps talking about like, oh, okay, Ray is rebuilding the Jedi Order, or they got to rebuild the Jedi Order. But my thing is like, realistically, how? Like, I mean, I get like, how do you, unless you're going to change the rules of what, which is fine. I mean, that's what they choose to do. That's fine. But I'm saying, per what we already have now, if she was to rebuild the Jedi Order based upon the premises of what's already been established, it will take forever for that to even happen. Because you got one person that's a Jedi, Rey. Theoretically, let's just say she becomes she's a master. Okay, if she takes on a Padawan, well, you have to wait for that Padawan to then graduate to becoming a knight.
That's not what
To
they would
then,
do. That's not what they would do. They would rip off the expanded universe yet again. Basically, when Luke redid it, he took over Yavin 4, the base on Yavin 4, and he created a new Jedi temple. And he just taught an
right.
entire class. He got like 30, prospective guys of all varying ages. He didn't do the whole like, I mean, eventually they kind of did, but he just taught them all simultaneously and just brought them
Well,
up
even
that way.
yeah, I mean, even in that though, it's still like it's again, it seems kind of foolish to do it that way. I mean, I get it, but it still seems kind of foolish because no wonder why you have people, slipping off to the dark side. Because you got a classroom of 30 kids, you can't pay attention. You don't have that one-to-one contact like with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Okay, that's a one-to-one. You have time to deal with, okay, you know what? I can focus on you. That's my only focus. Even with you and I, when we were teaching, like you had time to teach me, and I was your only pupil at one point. So it was just like, oh, you poured all your energy into me. Now, next thing you know, you get like 15. When you got the club and you got 30 other kids, sure, five of them are gonna, really be into it. The rest of them just gonna be screwing around. So it's kind of like in universe, it just seems like it's not the most responsible thing to do when you're supposed to be like the guardians of the galaxy and you have this superpower
Well, yes
that
and no.
everyone can tap into. You got
It
you got
was
one
done.
person trying to do it all.
Yeah, but you got to remember this is done over hundreds of books. Like the way that it was
Like I said, it
organically
takes
done.
forever though.
Well, yes and no, not really, because if you just reread, because this is a problem. I mean, it's been like 30 years. I don't know how long it's been since you read, the Zahn trilogy, like Heir to the
It's
Empire
been
and
a
all
while.
that. Yeah. So the point is like it's really hard to like say these things because I do remember reading these books, even just those three. It was very organically done the way that he did, and it was believable. And that's all you really needed, especially because at the time, the New Republic had a firm hold on it. Sure, he had Thrawn you know, like messing with things, but the way that the expanded universe handled the rebuilding of the Jedi Order was great. All they'd have to do is adopt that. If you do that and just do it exactly the way it was done there, you'd be fine. Because again, I can't get into like hyper detail, although now you probably
Sure.
just do a Google search and just say, hey,
Right.
how did the expanded universe handle rebuilding the Jedi Order or ask ChatGPT or something, and it'll give you a whole synopsis. and it'll tell you
Mhm.
why it made sense. But the point is, at that time it did. The problem is that they keep thinking that they can reinvent the wheel, and doing it different. It's like, because when you're talking about the
That too.
source material, it's like you have
That
it
too.
there. It's already been written and it was a bestseller at one time. People like that. Stop messing with it just because you're trying to update it or make it different or put your own stamp on it. You know what I mean? It's like it's been
Mhm.
there. Just do it. All right,
Well, you're gonna yeah. Go
there's
ahead.
a lot of chats. Like a lot.
I
This
figured it would be.
this is gonna take a while. Maybe not as long. I did hear that his demons had really bad hold of him. He was talking about Edward Furlong. I still think they could have made it work. Yeah, they did, and I, it's true. But you did appreciate, especially when Sarah had her grave as a weapons cache. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Now, Universal basically says he's talking about the museum. I forgot that's the thing that Luke was doing, by the way, that I was reading about. So I just did a Google search on George. It says he has built a huge museum in Los Angeles, cost him $4 billion. How much did he sell Star Wars for? Percent says 4.005 billion. Universalum goes on to say, we're not going to remember more than half of the money George made from Star Wars was from the merchandising. That's actually true. Um, got 100% of the merch in the original contract. Yep. Turned out to be a cash cow for him. Also, Chris says basically the thing that we all do that I was just talking about. I wish they would have
Mhm.
just copy and pasted the expanded universe. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Of course, Universalum correctly says that George was against it, but then again, he wouldn't have had a choice. I mean, it's Disney's thing. He also had like episode 7, 8, 9 of his own. Disney was like, thanks, but no thanks.
Mhm.
Uh, now we got Travis Mitchell in again. So he says, good evening.
Mhm.
So we want to say good evening to you too, Travis. Good that you can join us. Universalum says, I remember reading George constantly not agreeing to it and wanting to stay in books. Now, that might have been a stipulation as part of the sale, much like what they did with the holiday special, right? That he put a clause in there saying you can like never, ever release the holiday special. Um, well, I don't even know if that could have been part of the deal because honestly, I don't think that Lucasfilm owns it. Um, oh, and then Iron Boy Wonder is talking about Terminator Dark Fate. Yep, that was Dark Fate was good. I liked it. He thinks that Starfighter might be doing like $1 billion. Uh, he's talking about how Mando and Grogu was like the worst box office. Yeah, well, that's the other problem too. We have to see. I mean, you would think that Disney would realize now that hey, maybe our way, maybe we need to try something different. Her son says, I'm still waiting on the right person to take on Knights of the Old Republic as a movie or series. Man, when Benioff and Weiss were actually the ones that were going to do that, I thought that was just like, I was really disappointed that didn't. I'm sure you were too. Uh, Ted basically says they just needed one person with a general plot and direction for the sequels who could also say, no, that's against canon, and then let the creators play in the sandbox. It would have been great. Yeah, along with the rest of the projects. And then Travis says, in the Jedi Academy trilogy, Luke rebuilt the Jedi Order by seeking out people who had a record of doing unexplainable things, while Lando and the droids watched Jello ball races. And then he goes on to say, one thing I think is key about George's vision is once he told the main story, his focus was on the things we don't focus on: smugglers, Ewoks, weird creatures, and different views of the Force. Yeah, it was a lot. I told you, it was a lot of chats.
Mhm.
We had a lot we had to get. But I mean, these are all good points. And again, I definitely agree that the expanded universe, if not direct adaptations, should have definitely served as the like template. I kind of understand why Disney put it as Legends and decanonized. Well, it's never really truly canon in the first place. People do forget that. But they basically said, look, we're not going to take anything from it. We're going to create something new because they wanted the continuity. But I still argue all you had to do was take, because there was a lot of stuff. I get what they were saying that, hey, a lot of things got convoluted in the expanded universe, and then, there's a lot of like gaps and plot holes and things, but you could say that about the movies too. So, what they should have done was just taken the good stuff from the expanded universe, canonized it, kind of like what Lucas himself did. He basically would include things like, okay, I'll take Quinlan Voss and put him in, episode 3. Hey, look, now he's canon. It's like all you had to do. I mean, they've been doing this really even under Disney, right? Hey, we're gonna pull Thrawn in. Hey, we're gonna pull Darth Revan in. We're gonna pull, some of these other guys from the expanded universe and other sources, and we're just going to be like, hey, we'll just canonize those elements. And that's all you have to do. You just leave out the stuff that maybe is a little weird or maybe wasn't fitting the general narrative of the expanded universe, because they did have like these like weird stories. Like, I'll give you an example. One of my favorite books, even though I avoid reading it for a long time because it just sounded like a romance novel, but it ended up being really good, and that was The Courtship of Princess Leia. And it was basically talking about how Han and Leia had to go back, to I forgot what planet it was, but she was betrothed to like some prince or something, and it was like she almost had to marry him to keep the peace and all this stuff. And it was just how Han had to try to deal with that and how they worked around it. It ended up being an amazing book, by the way. But it was one of those things that, yeah, okay, I get it. You don't canonize The Courtship of Princess Leia, okay? But you can canonize Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, Last Command. Let's see. Travis says, I got the sense shows like Obi-Wan the Acolyte are not stories George would be interested in, as he told the parts he deemed important. Yeah, that's probably true. Oh, this one's a particular tough one. Iron Boy Wonder. Talking about Thrawn, characters, legends. Yeah, Thrawn basically started out as like a Legends or Expanded Universe character, then he was brought in. That's what they probably should do. Universalum says, overall, I enjoy George's point of view more than everyone else's, even the bad. That's a good point. I mean, at least if he's going to screw it up, it's his own thing.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. It does go into your point about, hey,
yeah, like
I mean, it's getting away from the creators. Even if the creator has a boneheaded, stupid idea, at least it's his thing, and he'll fail in a way that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's his to make, and plus it's like we said, like we could argue about like whether Anakin should have been, 8 years old or 10 years old, or should he been 15 at the start of this thing. It's like, I mean, it's subjective in my opinion. But I think that, the Trade Federation, going back to what you were saying, it felt like a economics class or something like that. But I mean, it's like, why do we watch Smallville and get all this? Like, okay, do we need to see Clark in high school? No, we just need to see him as, like, okay, maybe his early days of Superman.
There's a difference. There's a difference there, because there was enough with the Clark Kent thing in high school. There were entire comic series, including Superboy and things like that, that actually depicted that time period. It was an entirely important time period that was relatively untapped in live action TV shows, movies, stuff like that, but it was heavily tapped in the comics, even so much as being included in Superman 3, to a degree, even the original Superman the movie, but especially Superman 3, when, oddly enough, they had
it's a reunion and he went back.
Yeah, and they had
he met Lana again.
Yeah, which is the chick that I think of her, Annette O'Toole. They actually had Annette
Hmm.
O'Toole playing Lana Lang. That's why it was so wild that she became like Martha Kent
Became
in
Martha
Smallville.
Kent. Yeah.
And the other thing is, see, what that would have been like is if they had decided to make an entire series or something of a young Anakin like that. And I'd be fine with that if that's what they wanted to do. My problem is the focus of the prequels was really the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin and the fall of Anakin.
There's a relationship of what?
Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then Anakin's fall. And of course, the fact that they
Right.
were once like brothers and then they had to become enemies, and that's what leads to that epic duel. And it's
Yeah, but
basically
it's
about Palpatine seducing him and all that.
yeah, but you kind of have to show us how we get there. It's like, okay, if you start with you have to kind of show, all right, why where did Anakin come from? Why was he so important? Like, I think we always talk about context. I think Phantom Menace gives us a lot of context as to like, okay, why? And I mean, sure, could you have done it? Yes, I'm not saying that you couldn't have. However, I think it's more. I think it's cooler that you can see like, all right, here's this boy that we discovered in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, okay, yeah, he's has all these abilities and he can do things. Why? And then it's like, okay, now granted, the midichlorian thing, I know. But at least it's like, okay, you test him and he's like, wow, this kid's got more midichlorian. It's almost like saying, like,
All
oh,
right.
this guy's got a higher IQ than Stephen Hawking. Like, okay, we need to figure out what the heck it is
You
about this kid. Like, where did he come from? How did this happen? Oh, it's a mysterious thing. Like, I don't know. I just came up pregnant and one day and now gay. Okay, so you are part of this whole prophecy. I think if you do episode, if you cover
No,
like you said in a
but
monologue,
see,
not the
here's the
monologue.
problem. Here's the problem with what you're saying. Because you're kind of you're keeping episode 2 the way it is. I'm not suggesting that you do that. See, that's the problem.
Well,
When
no,
I
because
say
you
it should
said
have
use the
started with
open and crawl
episode,
though.
yes, but I said you could do it that way. Or if you wanted to make a proper episode 1, you take Anakin the age that he is in episode 2. You make the first third of the movie where he's a little boy. You don't have to make a whole movie about this. You could do the first third of the movie, then he becomes the Anakin that we all know. And you don't have like a lot of the dopey things that we saw in episode 2. You retool episode 2 to where it's more
Well,
similar to what
then,
we saw in the Clone Wars. Because then episode 2 could have actually been almost like a big Clone Wars thing. Because one of the problems that a lot of people had, including you and I, we've talked about it, is that you don't get to see enough of the actual relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin when they're fighting side by side and they're actually brothers, right? I mean, that's the problem. That's like the whole crux is this thing, and you only see a little bit of it in episode 2, and then episode 3 you have a little bit in the beginning, and then it falls apart. And your criticism at the time when we were
mhm.
actually reviewing these movies was you said the problem I have, and I wholeheartedly agree because it was the same thing I was saying. I just didn't say it first. You basically said, why do we have to watch the Clone Wars to actually get this depiction? This is what should have been in a movie. And then I responded by saying, yes, they could have taken episode 2, made that one, include some elements of the Phantom Menace in episode 2. So, like the first third of the movie or something like that, or maybe the first half hour, whatever it is, could be dedicated to that. And then it almost becomes like some of these other things where, you have, like, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The first little bits
Mhm.
of that movie, River Phoenix is playing Indiana Jones, okay? Because that's going to
Mhm.
affect the relationship with his dad, like all that stuff. They give you exactly what you need in order for that part of the story to work. And they could have done the same thing with a young Anakin.
The only problem with that is that you still miss the start of the war though. Like what
No, you
started? I mean,
don't.
it's called Star Wars because
Start of the war
without the whole.
happened in episode 2.
Well, no, but I'm saying like the whole inception of like the Trade Federation, that whole thing like that kind of like set
You can
up.
incorporate it Because look, you could take out. I don't need to see Anakin and Padme riding like bulls or whatever. You could have done a lot. Think of how much of episode 1 and 2 were wasted on unnecessary things. I mean, think about
I
it. Like
could.
all this Jar Jar
Yeah,
stuff, then with the
the
Boss
Jar Jar.
Nass thing,
Yes,
like all of that
yes,
stuff.
that I
Everything that you
agree.
see that a lot of the things that you see that were just like, pulse pounding, okay, Padme's in danger. So now we're going to take the next 20 minutes of the movie and show like a chase, between him and Jango Fett and all this and them going into a bar. I'm saying you could have rewritten the movie so it was tighter and it gave us what we actually needed and wanted.
That I would. Okay, so to that point, I would agree. I will agree to that. All I'm saying is that I think in episode one, I think you could have put more. I think that would have been more beneficial in one than two, because I think in two you need to show more the development of Obi-Wan. To your point, Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, which I agree, but then also like the the love between Anakin and Padme.
See, but you could have done that in what would
But I think
become episode 2. See, what I'm saying is you make episode 2 episode 1. You show the first third of, like kind of reminiscent where he's a little kid and we see where he goes wrong or, the seeds planted. You could put a lot of the elements that were in episode 1, the necessary ones, you could put in the first third of that movie. Then you make the
so.
rest of the movie where all I'm talking about, because I keep talking about episode 2. I'm not talking about episode 2 the way it is. The only reason
No, I
I'm
know.
saying in episode 1, if you recreated it, you make him the age that he was in episode 2 for most of the movie.
So you want to do like you said, going back to your point you just made about Indiana Jones. Have was it River Phoenix
Yeah.
as okay? Like you give us maybe a third of Jake Lloyd essentially, and then
Right. Right.
okay, yeah, and
And then
then
it
it's like
goes to
okay,
Hayden Christensen for
and
the
then we
rest.
did through the rest of the okay. Fine.
Right.
And I think
Because
if they'd have did that in one, I think if you'd have did that in one though, like it would have been fine. And then you could have made two just about
yes,
Anakin.
that's what I'm
Okay.
talking about. Episode
Okay.
2 would now focus on the Clone Wars, and now you do the development between Padme and Anakin, and now you do the development between Obi-Wan
Yeah,
and
I mean,
and
I
and
I agree with
Anakin.
that.
Because now
I'm just
you
saying,
can
like,
really
I'm just
it
saying we
basically
didn't.
would be like a Clone Wars episode, is really what it would be. Well, really like a
Yeah.
story arc, right? Because it's a 2.5 hour movie.
Well, yeah. My thing is just, I'm just saying, I don't think that we should have ignored. My point was that I don't think we should have ignored having a young Anakin at that age.
Yeah,
Like
no,
we needed to
I'm
see
not.
that part.
No, I mean,
Okay,
and I
that was just my
agree.
only point.
I'm just saying you could have done that in the first third of the movie, and then gotten into what you would
Two
have
things
put
can be
in
true.
episode 2, but you keep that in episode 1, and now you make what I guess what you'd have to call an episode 2.5, but it would really be episode 2. That becomes like a Clone Wars thing, and now you
Hmm.
deal with the depiction, and now it's more impactful because you really can see and focus on their friendship, and that's
Hmm.
obviously they're having their adventure, like what they did in the Clone Wars.
And then yeah, okay.
And then you
So
have
two things.
episode 3, and I think that just
Yeah,
would
I
have
think
flowed
two.
a lot better.
No, I agree with you. I think two. I think both parts, both of what we're saying is true, and two things can be true at once. So I think you're agreeing. They're saying, okay, we keep little Anakin. We do need to see that part,
Oh,
but just not for
100%.
the entire film. Okay,
Right.
that's all I need. See,
Because
head to head.
because because the problem I have with episode 1 is like 70% of that movie is not necessary to anything when you actually talk about, like, okay, fine, it makes a fine standalone story,
Hmm.
but it's almost like what used to frustrate you and I about the Clone Wars series. They would get off on some weird like 4 episode story arc, and we'd be like, wait a
Oh
minute.
yeah. Go
This
back to this whole
yeah,
yeah.
I don't care about
Uh,
this. I want to see what's going on with Palpatine, with Anakin, with Obi-Wan, like the stuff that actually
right,
matters.
right, 100%.
And
I'm with you.
that was like a 22 episode, 7 season, series. So imagine what you're like when you're talking about a trilogy of movies, right? Like you only got like 3 movies to do this, and I think that's the reason why people had an issue, because again, it's not what we
Hmm.
were sold. It's the acolyte problem again. Lucas told us,
Hmm.
"Hey, I'm gonna make the prequel trilogy. Like you said this back in like '95 or something. And it's gonna show how Anakin, and Obi-Wan met each other and how they became friends and all this. And instead, we get this weird like creature through like most of the movie. It's like, wait, what? No. So yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
now there's, unsurprisingly, since
Yeah.
we went off on this like whole thing. Uh,
See, this is what I did. I knew it was going to start a whole bunch
well, I
of.
mean, it is good. I gotta admit. It's good. All right. So Universal says, I'd rather have Georgia 789 than the crap we got. Be careful what you wish for, is all I can say. George understood that you needed time between films, so one after another too much. That is true and not true in the sense of the only reason why Lucas did that is not because, see, a lot of
I
people
think it's
romanticize it.
technology.
Yeah, it's because it took him that long to make those movies. Everybody,
Yeah.
people that weren't around back then, and I don't know, maybe he was. I mean, I don't know the age of half of our viewers or anything like that. But I will just say this
Except
is a
Travis.
blanket.
No, he's young.
Yeah, I know Travis is young. Universal, I'm not sure. But the thing is, basically, people forget or never knew that the whole reason why those movies came out every 3 years was because they took that long to make them. I don't know what George would have done had the technology been ready, available, and he could have done it faster. Maybe he still wouldn't have. I mean, there's somebody would have to ask him, I guess. But, I mean, I can't say that isn't true, but, I'm just saying that that's the reason. So then Travis says, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. We are just barely seeing the implications of, oh yeah, of what that means. I would want George to explore that. That's a good idea. That could work too. Universal says the main problem with George is that he had instant gold with the original cast. By not using them after the original three was a huge mistake. I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. Not using them was a huge mistake. Tristan agrees, and Travis comes back and says, Disney's credit, the old EU did next to nothing with Force Ghosts, pretty much avoiding using Ben, Yoda, and Anakin after their ghosts. Sequels started to implying what they're capable of. Yeah, but I mean, you have to remember there's a little bit of a caveat there. You got to be careful, Travis, with that. Don't give Disney too much credit. I'm not saying don't give them credit, but don't give them too much. Part of the reason why the EU did or did not do things, more like did not, was because Lucas directly told him, hey, you can't do that. I remember that there were times where authors came to him and said, hey, we want to do this with this character or that with that character or this with like Force Ghost. They weren't allowed to do it. They weren't allowed to do it. They basically were told by Lucas, you cannot do this. You have to write around this. So, um, and then of course, Dom joins us and basically says yes to that. Amazing, positive comment, but we'll get a negative. Then Travis says, imagine George's big return, showing how one can master the cosmic being to the point where they can walk amongst the living again, bringing Luke and the other Jedi back to life. I could see that. I could see that. I don't necessarily know if it's. I mean, I think that now that we've seen a lot of these things, it's easy to say that. But again, I don't think that George would do that because he wouldn't let any of the authors do it. Now, it could be that he didn't, because there were also times that he told the EU writers, you can't do that because I'm going to do something with this later. And he didn't want the continuity conflicts. Then Kristan says, nobody better touch my loving memories of Smallville.
It's funny. I just finished it.
Did you?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I'm still, because I'm watching that Talkville. Then, of course, Dom says, just a reminder, Mandalorian Grogu was an absolute flop. Yes. And then Travis says, I can't speak for George, only see Star Wars through the lens. Showed it to me through that I loved while others hated. Something tells me he would have liked Mandalorian and Grogu. Actually, he did like Mandalorian and Grogu. That that was the thing. And again, I mean, it's not a bad movie. It just, again, is it a great Star Wars movie? No, not a great, but it was good.
Yeah,
And
it's funny because now they're saying that what is it? The director, was it Sean Levy of Starfighter, said that Starfighter is going to feel a lot like A New Hope. That's when a lot of people are starting to say, that we're
well, I
starting to
hope
see
so.
some things about Starfighter. Say it feels like A New Hope, and I'm like, again, when people say that now,
I
because
know.
we heard that before,
Yes, we
is it J.J.
have.
Abrams? Like, like basically, is it
Uh huh.
that or
Uh huh. Yeah.
you know?
Right. I mean, I'm basically at the point with Star Wars. Don't tell me, show me.
Well, is it a brand New Hope type vibe, or are you trying to rehash basically A New Hope like JJ did with Force Awakens?
I'm gonna give this my best shot. Iron Boy is a full like weird mode here. So I think the original trilogy is fantastic. Prequels disappointed him because of Anakin's transition to Vader, which feels completely
Comic.
convoluted, disingenuous, unbelievable, suddenly fast, and convenient. And I would actually agree with that in some respects, not in all,
Yeah, I
but
could say that.
in
I could see
some,
that.
yeah, I do think that that's a valid criticism actually. Let me get this other one. So we watched episode 1 and 2 again after a decade last month. Didn't feel satisfied enough with that trilogy. Did not see episode 3 because complicated problem with okay, probably had problems watching. Well, I would suggest watching episode 3 again because that really does. First of all, that's probably the only really truly good movie in the whole prequels. And on top of that, I think that the other thing that it does is it actually elevates episodes 1 and 2. Like you like 1 and 2 better after seeing 3 because it ties things together so well that I think that it gives a certain amount of weight and credence to episode 1 and 2 that they don't have if you just view them individually. Let's see. Travis says, point of all the Clone Wars being skipped goes back to my point a bit. Which aspects of the story George Lucas was interested in versus the fans? And yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, that's the, the good thing about George Lucas is also the bad thing. And that's why we titled this thing. Should George Lucas return to Star Wars? Because again, I have to reiterate that we have no illusions of him actually returning. Nobody's thinking that
Right.
he's coming back. However, if we're just going into speculation mode and just having a Star Wars discussion among us as Star Wars fans, should the opportunity arise, should he be allowed to do it? And I think that that's something that Travis brings up that you do have to factor in quite a bit here is that, you have to be careful what you wish for. Because one of the problems is Lucas is the ultimate independent filmmaker. Yes, he'll come in and he'll probably make a pretty decent movie, but it might not be the movie you want. And that's the thing. That's where you have to trade it in. Yeah, Iron Boy's got some more that I have to decipher. So bear with me. Uh Original trilogy, fantastic. Well, I don't think that people are necessarily saying that the Revenge of the Sith is like the greatest Star Wars ever. It's not going to take out the original trilogy. It's the best prequel movie. I think that's the, he goes on to say, remember not all Clone Wars protagonists were by Ahsoka or Anakin or Obi-Wan. neither Yoda or Padme. I mean, right, it did focus on the greater picture, but again, I think that if you're looking at the point, because you have to look at things as an overall story arc, right? You can't just
Mhm.
zero in on a particular thing. When you look at, and this is true even by Lucas's own, when you look at everything from the prequels, which would include the Clone Wars, I mean, technically it includes a lot of Disney's things too, but we'll just stick with the Lucas-based project. That Clone Wars original trilogy, it's basically about the rise, fall, and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. That's
Mhm.
basically what it's about. It's not even about Luke. Luke is really nothing more than the tool for Anakin's redemption.
Yep.
It's not about Palpatine coming to power. It's not about, hey, let's figure out what the Force is. It's about the rise, fall, and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. That's what those projects are ultimately about. And so whenever I levy any kind of a criticism against them, it's not because of something I personally want to see. It's because I'm trying to show, hey, the other problem that Lucas has is he tries to make everything for kids, which is fine, but for some reason with the original trilogy, he understood the kids were sophisticated enough to get, you know, to where you can actually have something that everybody likes. I mean, even though sure you can argue that the Ewoks maybe tested people a little bit, but the Ewoks are like it's like watching Apocalypse Now compared to like Jar Jar and something like that, right? All right. Travis says, goes on to say basically, a very telling insight into George's vision is the two Ewoks movies released after Return of the Jedi, both of which he wrote. Definitely not the kind of stories I wanted to see, but what he wanted to say. Yeah, that's true. He says, I'm 29, won't be young for much longer, haha. You know, it's actually funny you bring that up, actually, because so I'll be 56 next month. And the funny thing is, the only time I ever freaked out turning an age was not 40 or 50, it was 30. Like I was traumatized by turning 30. I remember going to see Duran Duran
Yeah.
like the night before I turned 30. I remember waking up at 6 in the morning, because I was born at like 7:37 or 7:47 in the morning. I remember it's like 6 in the morning on my birthday. I'm like, I'm still 29. I'm still 29. I'm still in my 20s. Like I don't know why, but for some weird reason, I just
No,
completely like,
facts.
you know, because a lot of times guys freak out at turning 40 or 50.
Mm.
I didn't care. Now, I think when I turned 60, that might, it's not as traumatic as my, when I turned 30, but I think that one might sting a little bit, you know?
Hey,
That one might,
it's about 30.
yeah. Well, I think 30
30,
is when
60.
you actually cross the
30, 60, and
threshold.
90. That's those when you start freaking out.
Yeah, prime numbers, right? All right. So Travis goes on to say, I recall Lucas said you couldn't resurrect Vader, build another Death Star, kill Luke, Leia, Han, or Lando. Hence why they killed Chewie. Yeah, with the moon thing. That's great. Um, yeah, that's funny. Travis quoting like a John Cusack thing by being 56. Yeah, 56, man. No, time flies.
He doesn't look a day over 30, I'll tell you
No, that's. I hope that lasts for a while. I really do. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, I think with this discussion, it's cool. It's fun. We always love to speculate. Honestly, these are some of my favorite shows because they're basically just pure discussion shows. They're not based on some like tidbits. We don't have to reference articles or like pages and notes to make sure we're getting all this stuff. It's like, hey, let's just talk about, you know, a concept and basically riff on it. So it's been a lot of fun, guys. We love to do stuff like this. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. There's nothing really. I mean, August 4th, I know that's still like what, 2 or 3 weeks away. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the next thing that we're gonna be doing. That's the Ninth Jedi series, right?
Yep.
So we still have like probably 2 shows maybe
Hmm.
of whatever. I mean, we didn't even know we were going to talk about this until, a day or two ago. We like to keep things fresh around here. So yeah, I'm actually wearing, can't really see it, but one of our head-to-head shirts. So you guys can buy merch from us now. So go ahead and there's a link in the description. Buy some merch, help support the channel. Anything, like hitting the like button, subscribing, the notification bell, because you guys know how our schedule can get, would be really, really, really helpful to us. So make sure you do that. All right, let me just get these last few chats in here. Um, First I gotta decipher Iron Boys. So episode 2 is the most romantic Star Wars film. The whole film felt like romance. Yeah, Anakin and Padme ended up marrying Naboo. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of things that they could have done a lot different. Travis says the time flies now, and so do the First Order stormtroopers.
Nice.
Nice. I almost want to end it on that, but Ted says
Right.
he's 58 physically, but mentally he's still a very mature 13-year-old. Well, at least you got some maturity there. That's good. And
Right,
then Travis
exactly.
finishes us off by saying, "I would like to see George tell the wife C-3PO before he met Anakin." I think he meant the life, or the life after he is C-3PO. Yeah, that would be. Man, can you imagine C-3PO a Star Wars story?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it'd probably be hilarious though.
You know what? Well, it would. The problem is it would probably like I'd get PTSD because I'd be reminded of that crazy like droids getting lost story arc from the Clone Wars. Because remember, 3PO was in the lead on that one.
Yeah, well, you know what they could do? Almost like a Lion King 2.0, like when they did have Timon and Pumbaa have 3PO and R2.
Somebody did something like that. I think they like used either AI or something. Somebody did something like that.
You could tell the story.
Let's see. Travis says there's a clip of George Lucas talking to Seth MacFarlane where he talks about his TiVo being full of Jackass episodes. Most creative people are never fully mature. I'll tell you, actually, that's true because Patrick Stewart like was a huge
Oh,
Beavis and Butthead
Beavis and
fan.
Butthead.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I mean, that's kind of funny. But I think the funniest thing was when I think it was staged. I actually don't remember, but there was a thing where he's talking to Seth Green and a bunch of people like from the Robot Chicken thing, and somebody brings up Mara Jade, and he starts to like lose it and is like it's not his character. I think it was probably like kind of a stage, like comedy thing or something, but
Mhm.
it's still a pretty funny watch if you find that on YouTube. Just like search for George Lucas. George Lucas talks about Mara Jade. It's the funniest. Um, I just I just never get sick of that. All right, for realsies, last comment. He basically, or I'm sorry, Travis says we got C-3PO a Star Wars story when him and R2 get lost and crush the king of the little people from Willow. Not little as in a dwarf. That's all right. We're not necessarily PC. I mean the mini people. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities out there. So actually, before we go, did we decide really should George Lucas return? Because there's actually a bunch
Um,
of questions we didn't even answer. Like I don't even think that. Well, no, we did. We did say like we want him to return. Um,
or where we put them if we put like the streams or the films or
yeah.
you know stuff
But I
like that.
mean,
Should
but I
he?
mean, yeah.
I still feel like he should because I feel like Disney is trying to create something that they really just don't understand. And I think you got too many chefs in the kitchen, and I think maybe you need to just give it back to George. He can hire people to do the television stuff. It can be done the way that he wants it, and they can have free reign to do that, but leave the films to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately I would agree. I would say, hey, let's just get him in there to right the ship, or at least put it on some sort of a track that somewhat makes sense. Again, I understand that it's probably not going to happen. Like nobody's actually saying that, but still. Oh, Voyager joins us. All right, I got to get her. Says, I'm so excited for George's new museum. It looks amazing. The fact that he got the real estate in the middle of LA is crazy. So much money. Yeah, right? I mean, it's George Lucas. He's going to be able to pull off whatever. I mean, I had to admit, like I said, I didn't remember earlier, and then somebody actually, I think it was Universal, that basically brought it up. But yes, it was a museum that I couldn't think of. And yeah, I'm pretty cranked up about it too, actually. I think that it could be something very cool to see. And it looks just amazing. Like it really is. It's not just like your normal type of museum. I mean, this is, if you guys don't know anything about it or whatever, just search it online. It's actually cool.
I wonder
I
if it's
mean,
anything like the exhibit you and I went to go see.
I think it is, but it's like on steroids. It's
Yeah, more massive.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's crazy. Really crazy. It goes really in depth, and I mean, I don't think it just deals with Star Wars either. I think it's like a whole, I think it focuses on a lot of stuff in his career. It's really cool. Like I said, if you don't know anything about it, go online, check it out. It's gonna be something to see. Let's put it that way. And then Travis basically talks about how George has a hilarious cameo in the new Minions movie playing himself. Yeah. All right. So I think we're gonna wrap it here. Hopefully you guys could join us next week. We'll be back here. I don't know exactly what it is. I mean, this is kind of interesting because again, until the Ninth Jedi series comes out, it could, anything. As usual, I mean, if some earth-shattering news or something comes up next week, obviously we'll be talking about that. Otherwise, it'll probably be something like what we did today. Just a good
Yep,
general
it's actually
discussion.
going to be.
Oh, you know?
Um, yes,
Oh,
it's
all
going
right.
to be the most underrated character um, in the original trilogy. Who's the most underrated character you think in the original trilogy?
Singular character.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Daryl has
So you guys got
spoken.
some. You guys have homework to do. Do your research.
Yeah.
Who would you say is the most underrated character in the? We'll come up with our own. We'll all talk about them. It should be fun.
Yeah, that actually is a fun. That's a good one. It's a good discussion. All right, so you heard it. Daryl has spoken. Next week, we're going to be talking about the most underrated character, single characters. This isn't like a top 5 or 10. Most
No,
underrated character in the original
original
trilogy?
trilogy.
Okay,
Original trilogy.
original trilogy. All right. So, let us know what you guys think. In the meantime, of course, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you subscribe, please hit that notification bell in case we have to move the show. You'll always be informed on when we're live. Hit that like button. You guys, look, you watch YouTube, you know the drill. You know what the algorithm likes. Let's feed the algorithm together. Hit that like button. Of course, continue the discussion with us on Discord. We got some new merch. You guys can buy a shirt, mug, mouse pad, hoodie. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And then, what's the other thing? Oh, yeah, of course, our membership thing. You could throw $1 or two our way, just like a kind of a tip, or we do have packages. We can do $5. I think it's like 10 or 15, then 25. Well, actually, why don't I just put it up? Yeah, 5, 10, and 15. It's like different membership levels. You can join at one of those levels, and it really does help out the channel because trying to grow the channel, not the easiest thing to do, right? but we do want to be able to put out more content. So those are things, as always, look, the best way that you can support us is just keep watching us, keep interacting with us, comment on our videos, share them, and, that way we can grow the community. So until next week, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.